Hello, everybody. We are a couple of minutes early for the live stream, so I'm gonna finish setting things up while I am getting ready for the live stream. So talk amongst yourself. We got about a minute. Ooh, look, my hair is green screen. Well, it's not green screen friendly. Let's move it out of the way because it's a bit distracting. Here, let me tie it up. There. I'll have to remember to do that when we're doing live streams. Let me scoot up. Can y'all hear me? Great. All right, it is 4 o'clock. Let me just share this live stream out really quickly. Pardon me. And then we will be about the business of fancy dancing. Let me just share this really quickly. Y'all have to forgive me. I'm not on Facebook all the time, so here we go. All right, let's share this out. Hey, y'all, we are about to go live, and we are going to be discussing the book Memphis by Tara M. Stringfellow. Period. Come and join us. Okay. There is that. Let me look at my phone battery real quick. Okay, let's see. All right, I'm just going to keep this over here, like my little second camera. Let me get the book. And let me get my script so that we can get going. All righty, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Hello, everybody. Welcome, live stream viewers. Welcome, replay viewers. I am so happy to have you. Today, we are going to be talking about the book Memphis by Tara M. Stringfellow. I'm super excited to talk to you about her book, but before we do, let's talk about the woman behind the book, okay? So let me see if I remember how to do this right, y'all. Hold on a second. Look at me, I remembered. Yes. Okay. So welcome to Lovely's Digital Book Club. We are talking about Memphis by Tara M. Stringfellow. So let's talk before we start jumping into this live stream because I'm super, super excited. I really, really enjoyed this book. Let's learn a little bit about Tara and who she is and why she wrote the book. Hold on a second, y'all. There we go. Let me use this mouse. Ooh, I done went too far. Okay. Pardon me. So, Tara is a Southern storyteller. She's a poet, a former attorney, and a Northwestern University MFA graduate. Tara M. Stringfellow has written for Collective Unrest, Minerva Rising, Jet Fuel Review, Women's Arts Quarterly Journal, and Apogee Journal, among other publications. After having lived in Okinawa, Ghana, Chicago, Cuba, Spain, Italy, and Washington, D.C., she moved back home to Memphis, where she sits on her porch swing every evening with her hound Huckleberry, listening to records and chatting with neighbors. And just in case any of y'all were interested, There's her Huckleberry Hound right there. That's sweet little Huckleberry. Okay. So, I really thought her dog is huge. I've watched interviews with her, and that is a true Southern Hound dog. That dog is hunting something. Anywho, so let's jump on into this. I really, really love this book. Let me tell you guys what it's about. I'm going to read the blurb, and then we're going to dive into the questions and all that stuff, okay? Summer 1995, 10-year-old Joan, her mother, and her younger sister flee her father's explosive temper and seek refuge at her mother's ancestral home in Memphis. This is not the first time violence has altered the course of the family's trajectory. Half a century earlier, Joan's grandfather built this majestic house in the historic Black neighborhood of Douglas, only to be lynched days after becoming the first Black homicide detective in the city. Joan tries to settle into her new life, but family secrets cast a longer shadow than any of them expected. As she grows up, Joan finds relief in her artwork, painting portraits of the community in Memphis. One of her subjects is their enigmatic neighbor, Miss Dawn, who claims to know something about curses, and whose stories about the past help Joan see how her passion, imagination, and relentless hope are, in fact, the continuation of a long matrilineal tradition. Joan begins to understand that her mother, her mother's mother, and the mothers before them persevered, made impossible choices, and put their dreams on hold so that her life would not have to be defined by loss and anger. That the sole instrument she needs for healing is her paintbrush. Unfolding over 70 years through a chorus of unforgettable voices that move back and forth in time, Memphis is an indelible portrait of inheritance, celebrating the full complexity of what we pass down in family and as a country. Brutality and justice, faith and forgiveness, sacrifice and love. This was such a good book, y'all. Whoops, I didn't mean to hit that microphone. Oh my gosh, everything's getting seen through the green scene. Anyway, this is such a wonderful, wonderful book. I listened to the audiobook, and that was narrated by Karen Murray. So when Tara wrote this book, she really was a poet before she was a lawyer. She was a poet. Her whole family really loves words and writing and stories, and you can totally tell that they're sprinkled throughout this whole book. So she meant it to be one of those long epic poems like the Odyssey. She's also been quoted as saying it's the duty of the writer to write about the times in which they find themselves. This book came out, it's her debut book. It came out in 2022, so it hadn't had a chance to rack up a lot of awards, but man, it's going to. That's how good it is. It's a national bestseller. It was long listed for the Aspen Words Literary Prize, and it's been featured on the Today Show's Read with Jenna, and that's Jenna as in Jenna Bush. She has a hyphenated name. I'm sorry, Jenna girl. I don't remember your married name. I am from Texas, y'all. That's why I'm acting familiar with Jenna Bush. I don't know her. I just know of her and her twin sister's exploits. And my goodness, I ain't even trying to call her out. I couldn't imagine being a teenager and living your life publicly. Since I was being a tiny bit shady, let me say something else I know that's nice about those Bush twins, is when the Obama daughters were going to go live in the White House, Jenna and her sister wrote a letter to Michelle, what is her name? Malia and Sasha. They wrote a letter to Malia and Sasha. Now, they often do this, the little children who are occupying the White House, but they said some sweet things about, hey, people are probably going to say some mean things about your dad, and just know that you're the one who really knows him and knows his heart, and you love him. And it was just really, really sweet. So that's what I get for being shady. Now I said something nice that I also know to be true. Okay, good. All right, so let's see. Let's get started. I think we talked a little bit about the book. Yep, I told you, Tara, and even some of the awards that it's winning. It reminds me of The Women of Brewster's Place. And you can tell she thought about every single word. I love the way she tells this story. And it's piecemeal, but it's kind of out of order. But it makes sense the way she placed it. So let me just go on and let's see. What are we going to do here? I am not going to read the Memphis origin story. It's kind of long. I might read it, but you know what? No, it's fairly long. It's on her website. Her website is tarastringfellow.com. Let me see if I can put that in the comments section. Oh, by the way, let me go back and do this before I forget. Share the live stream. If you really like the books that our book club reads, you like my selections, please share the live stream. This lets the algorithm know that you like what I'm doing and you want other people to come in and hang out with the cool kids. So yeah, share the live stream. Okay, now let me check this. I'm going to post the comment, and it on her website is Tara Stringfellow.com. Okay, that's her website. You really should read the origin story for Memphis. If we have time, I'll read it. And the origin story is just is about 2 pages of how she came up with the idea for this story and how she got it written. And I think it's really, really important to read that to understand a little bit more about this story. But anyway, this is a fiction book, but it's loosely based on Joan's family. A lot of the characters have similar storylines. A lot of the people are amalgamations of folks in her family. Like I said Joan because that's the main character, and I believe it's Tara. She's not going to see that it's her, but I do. That's just me. Anyway, Tara, her grandfather really was the first Black detective in Memphis, Tennessee. He really did get lynched. Now, the white newspapers said that it was a boating accident, but the Black newspapers reported it as a lynching. So let me find my notes, and we can jump into some of these questions. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so the first question is, Joan's sections are told in first person, while the other North women are written in third person. How did this change in perspective affect your reading experience? Did it make you identify more strongly with any of the characters? So before I answer that, we're going to start off with just showing you the family tree. Can y'all see that? So this is the North family tree. And the Stringfellow's got a bigger family tree than this, but again, loosely based on them. And then, as the question alludes to, the book is in 3 parts, and the chapters, what am I trying to say? Rotates. That's not the word I'm trying to say, but I'll use it. It rotates between Joan, pardon me, y'all. So the chapter titles rotate between Joan, Miriam, August, Hazel. I don't think Maya got her own chapter. No, Maya did not get her own chapter in years. Like it said, it covers about 70 years. So I really think that I like that Joan's chapters were told in first person. She is the main character. It does start with her. I'm sorry, I'm yelling. I'm super excited. But anyway, she's the main character. So everything is being seen through her eyes. And we follow her from childhood to right when she's about to go off to college. So about when she's 18. And so we get to see the chapters with Joan, how she's changed in perspectives, who she was as a little girl versus as a young woman versus as a teenager. It's really interesting how when we go to the chapters that are her aunt or her mother, and even her grandmother, it was definitely different because the stories weren't being told through her eyes. But the stories that we do know of these people come through Joan's eyes, if that makes any sense. So I really think that she tied it very well together, even though Joan's chapters were told in first person and everybody else's was in second person. I really like that part. I love the aspect as well. Now, the second question is discuss the different generations of North women and North men and some of the defining characters of each person. Which traits were passed down through family line and which traits seem to belong to individuals? So, first off, that's their last name. And it's funny because in this book, Joan's maternal line are very, very Southern Black people. They don't like Yankees. They didn't really care for Joan's father because he came from Chicago. And, I think that might be one of the things that some people who are not familiar with Black American culture, especially Southern Black American culture, that there is not usually this much tension, but there is a bit of tension between Northern Blacks and Southern Blacks. And and a lot of the Northern Blacks came from the South, the Great Migration that happened and whatnot. But also when they were going up north, sometimes they looked down on people from the South and call us country bumpkins. That's not what Black people actually say. They call you Alabama. If they're calling you country, they'll either say country or they'll call you Alabama, as in from Alabama. And so there was that during the Great Migration. When people were running from the South trying to escape lynching, they went to north, to places like Chicago, New York, Philadelphia. And actually, even Denver was far enough north to get away from the lynching in the South as well. So like the old neighborhood of 5 Points in Denver, that's where a lot of Black people flocked from places like Texas and Tennessee and Alabama and Georgia and all those places. If they didn't all make it to Chicago and New York, they definitely made it to Denver. So anyway, there is that bit of tension that a lot of people are not always aware of between Northern Blacks and Southern Blacks. It's not the same reason why there are tension between Southern whites and Northern whites, but it's still there. Some of the reasons do overlap. So anyway, they want us to discuss the different generations of North women and North men. So let's start with the grandmother, the matriarch of the family. Now, I don't forget Big Mama's name. What is her name? Hold on, y'all. Hazel. Miss Hazel. So Miss Hazel, she was born in 1921. And she was born during segregation, Jim Crow, and all of that. And she still had a feisty spirit. She did not like anybody calling her girl. She hated it. In fact, there's a scene in the book where she is in the meat market. Pardon me, that's kind of gross. Excuse me. She's in the meat market, the local meat market in town. It's the store, basically. And it's run by a Jewish man. I forget his last name. His first name is Stanley. But Mr. Stanley's store. Mr. Stanley was a pillar of the Black community. Basically, if y'all know that mean we're rocking with Mark, because Mark's rocking with us. Mr. Stanley is rocking with the Black people in that neighborhood, so the Black people supported Mr. Stanley, even though he didn't sell pork, and so they had to go get their pig feet and stuff somewhere else. But Mr. Stanley respected the people in the community and supported them, and so they supported him too and respected him. He's an integral part to this story. He just shows up also in Miriam and August's life and Hazel's life as well. I'm sorry, there's a phone down here. I didn't realize that we put one down here and it's ringing. Anyway, I'm going to ignore that. I might go unplug it if it won't stop ringing. Anywho, so the reason why I bring this up is because that's how good of a writer Tara is. A lot of the times, because this book takes place over 70 years, sometimes people, again, who are not familiar with African American culture, don't always understand that during the times of segregation, we could not just go to any old store. You couldn't just walk into any store. A lot of the stuff that was in our neighborhood, if it was owned by white Southerners, they would give Black people bad meats, bad vegetables. It would make you sick. It was so bad that people like, he's an old vegetarian Black man, and what is his name? It's not H. Rat Brown. I cannot think of his name off the top of my head. I will, and I'll put it in the comment section. But he went vegetarian like 30, 40 years ago because eating meat back then as a Black person, if you weren't in the country, if you're in one of these upper cities, northern cities, you was running your risk of getting some bad meat and getting sick. Not at this meat market. So even though Black people really wanted to eat pig's feet and pig ears and chitlins and all that, they would just go to another market a few miles out of town because Mr. Stanley made sure they had what they needed as far as non-pork products. Remember, Mr. Stanley is Jewish and he ain't messing with no pork, not even for the Black people. So they respected that and they would just have fish fries on Friday. Anywho, so Miss Hazel, sorry, that was a long roundabout thing, but Miss Hazel, so she was a proponent of making something of your life, doing something with yourself. Her husband, Myron, built their house with his bare hands for her. She always wanted their lives to be better than what hers was. She was the first nurse at Northwestern, I believe. She was the first Black nurse at Northwestern. So her family, she was the impetus for her family being on the list of first. The first Black detective in Memphis, the first Black nurse at an all-white hospital. She gave that same fighting spirit to her daughters, August and Miriam, as well, especially after Myron died. Excuse me, Myron was lynched, y'all. He didn't die. I'm going to tell y'all what happened. Myron they would not allow him to arrest this person who was going around sexually assaulting folks. And they wouldn't let him arrest them. And then the police came and told Hazel that her husband died. She spit in the policeman's face who came and told her because she knew they had lynched him. She was pregnant with August. No. She wasn't pregnant with August. She was pregnant with Miriam when she spit in that man's face. And he was like, you better be glad you're pregnant. And she said, you better be glad too. And for a woman born in 1921, talking back to a white police officer like that, child. Anyway, after that incident, the whole community came because they knew what had happened too. They were so proud of Myron for becoming the first Black detective in all of Atlanta. And when they found out that he died, she was crying and upset. Of course. And so the whole community came. They stood watch over her house for 24 hours. Men who had been in World War II put on their uniforms and stood out there and watched her house the whole night. People brought her food and things to eat. People even climbed up in their big tree. They had a big, I forget what kind of tree it was, walnut tree. I don't think it was a poplar tree because I'm just thinking about the song, Strange Fruit. Anywho, because that community, Douglas community, helped each other. They were, in the truest sense of the word, a community. They were all experiencing some of the same types of oppression, and so they knew they had to work together to help each other. Anywho, some of the defining characteristics of the North women and the North in general are their doe-like eyes. So their eyes were very striking and doe-like or deer-like. I think we would probably say almond-shaped, but doe because it's like an almond turned on the side. So like doe, they must have also meant big eyes too, big pretty eyes with long lashes. So even the men who were Norths had that characteristic. Also that fighting spirit, also finding joy and embracing it where you can. All of those things were very characteristic of them. And also each of these women had some sort of talent, some sort of thing that they were really, really just amazing at. So for instance, Miriam's mom, or Hazel, was very good with her hands and sewing and making dresses. She also went to be a nurse. August could sing like nobody's business, had such a beautiful voice. But because of circumstances, she ended up opening a salon in their house. Who else? Then Joan was a painter. And Maya, her little sister, was really, really good at math and was going to be a doctor. Her mother was a nurse as well. Her mother had a talent too. not picking husbands. She was bad at that, boy, I'll tell you that much. I can't remember what her mother's talent was. Anywho, but they all had a special gift, and they just had to figure out how to embody it and use it to serve themselves in their community. Okay, so that's that. Let's go on to the next question. Actually, you know what? Let me remind y'all, hold on a second. If you are enjoying what we are talking about, and I hope that you are, let me, sorry. I keep trying to click these things and I just need to use the mouse. There, sign up for the newsletter. Sign up for the newsletter. I will put the newsletter, a link for the newsletter in the comment section, and it will appear across all of the platforms. So on Facebook and on YouTube, in case there are some of y'all who don't use Facebook, just like me, I don't be using it that much either. So you can just watch on YouTube and you can click and join the newsletter that way. And you really do want to join the newsletter. We're going to pause for a commercial break real quick. You want to join the newsletter because every time I send out the newsletter, which is twice a month, sometimes 3 if I'm feeling a little bit extra, you get all of the books that we're going to be reading through October, because we do 10 books a month in this online book club. You get read-alikes, you get the interviews from the author. You would have, if you were on the newsletter, then you got that email where you got to see Huckleberry Hound with his big old stuff walking down the street with his mama and that news reporter. Let's see what else we get in there. Just a lot of really fun things. So join the newsletter, sign up for that so you don't miss out on all the cool stuff and the extra things that I include. Anywho, let's go to the next question. Okay, this is question number 3. Oh, and I was supposed to be checking the comments to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Hold on, y'all. Let me check these comments real quick. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay. I don't see anything. Good. That might be good. Also, if you have any questions and you read the book and you want to be on the panel, just let me know. Put a post a comment, and then I'll invite you to the live stream. Okay, so number 3. Why do you think Miriam brought Joan and Maya to live with August and Derek, despite knowing what happened to Joan years before? Do you think she made the right choice? Why or why not? So, in the book, Joan's father is this really big wig in the Marines. He is about to receive his promotion from captain to major. And honestly, y'all, I don't know how the military stuff works. I don't know if he went from captain to major, but I know he was a major. So I don't know the rankings. Anywho, and Joan's mother and father had been just arguing off and on. There was a lot of infidelity and physical abuse. And this one was just the last straw. So the question asks, why do we think Miriam brought Joan and Maya to live with August and Derek? Derek is Joan's cousin. Derek sexually assaulted Joan when she was 3. And they had to go to counseling. And Joan's parents were afraid that they were going to take Joan and her little sister away. They were afraid that they were going to be called unfit parents. Derek did get taken away. He got sent to mandated state counseling for 6 to 8 months or something like that. And then he had to go back because he broke a classmate's arm. And then I think when he was 15 or so, he actually ended up going to the state penitentiary. If we have time, we'll get into that. If we don't, y'all read the book so you will understand what happened. Anywho, so the question says, why do you think she brought them there, despite what knowing happened to Joan years before? So in the book, when Joan's mother and father are fighting, he gives her a big black eye and she's leaving. He's like, where are you going? Where do you think you're going? You're a black woman with, what did he say? No money, no degree, or something like that. And he knew what he was doing. He had backed her into a corner. And he was right. Where was she going to go? She had no money. She had a dog, a big giant wolf dog, and 2 kids. Where was she going to go? That's why she went home, because the The question is, do you think that she made the right decision? Do you think she made the right choice? Why or why not? I think she made the right choice out of a whole bunch of bad choices to make. She could have chose to go somewhere where she did not have any family support. That wouldn't have been smart, because then she ended up getting to stay at her ancestral home without paying rent, without having to worry and find a job really quickly. She did find a job, but can you imagine? This was in the, let me see what year it was when they had to go and live there. Because they visited, all the children were born in the South. They were all born in Memphis. So this was like 1995, I think, when they went to go live there. And so she didn't have any money or anything like that. And so I think she just made the best of a really terrible situation. She needed support. She needed somebody who would understand her. She was also a battered wife. She had suffered a lot of domestic abuse. And in the 90s and even earlier, we were not as aware of how to help somebody trying to escape domestic violence as we are now. Everybody always wants to tell these folks, well, just leave. Where are they going? Riddle me that, Batman. Where are they going? Are they going to stay at your house? Are you paying for counseling? Do you have extra money for food and the electricity bill and the kids' clothing? All that stuff. So, she was in a tough situation and she made a tough decision. That worked out in the end. That's how I feel about the situation. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Wars fascinate me, Joan says. You know what? Actually, let's not move on to the next question. I think that I really should read the Memphis origin story. Then we can move on to the next question. I think it's super, super important for those of you who have not read the book to understand the impetus of this book. But also, even if you have read the book, you should still read this. So that's what we're fixing to do, okay? I am so sorry I keep hitting that microphone. Let me put it over here so y'all can still see my beautiful face. Okay. Memphis origin story. I come from a long, and this is Tara. I don't know if she pronounces her name Tara or Tara. I think Tara, like terra firma. Anyway, she says, it took me 4 summers and many a trip to my family attic in order to write this novel. Below is a piece about the journey, how long it took, what secrets I unearthed, and what I discovered about myself. Okay, I come from a long line of storytellers. My father, as much Marine as he is poet, would sit me in his lap with our copy of the best-left poems of the American people spread out before us, as he'd warned me that because I was a woman, because I was non-white, I'd have to write better than this man here. He pointed to Poe. During the day, my mother paused in her singing only to tell me Southern stories lush with history, that her mother marched with King, that her father was the unknown and unsung hero of Memphis, and that I descend from a long line of Southern quilters. She joked that her mother's quilts I slept under, and these stories were her Southern dowry and would be mine. How telling. Growing up, I knew my grandfather was the first Black homicide detective in Memphis, but the circumstances of his death were as murky as the bank of the Mississippi from which his body was pulled. My mother was all of 5 when her father was found, body broken and bruised, face unrecognizable. His pregnant widow screamed that he had been murdered and she had to be carried, near dragged, to his funeral. My mother remembered touching her daddy's face and wondering why it was so cold. I also knew my grandmother was the first Black nurse at Mount Zion Baptist Hospital in Memphis, that after the 4 little girls were bombed down in Birmingham, she didn't talk to nobody for weeks, not a soul. My daddy can remember Emmett Till's funeral in Chicago. He told me about the men in his family chain smoking to keep from sobbing. My mother recalls the way it snowed in Memphis after Dr. King died. Even though it was still April, full-on blizzard, she was 12. She says God himself didn't know what to do with his grief, so the heavens turned on Memphis. Turned on us all, she said, for taking King early. I grew up with devastating grief-laced stories about gorgeous and unknown Black folk. All I had was as proof were quilts and stories, but I knew intrinsically that it would be my lifelong duty, like my mother in our kitchen, to make those tales sing. What sparked my foray into fiction was racism, nothing but. A few days after my 31st birthday, the 2016 Donald Trump won the 2016 presidential election. I have never been naive about the racial injustices this country has birthed and suckled, but I was not prepared for the tsunami of, oh, I'm sorry, they cut it off. Anyway, I'm going to skip that part. By the time I had grown, I'd given up on being an attorney to write full time. I had left the law firm where I once worked, was doing odd jobs, teaching secretarial work, anything I could do to eat dollar tacos, pay Chicago rent, and complete an MFA program in poetry at night. But at the end of 2016, even the literary prayer of poetry wasn't offering the salvation I sought. I started writing the novel that would become Memphis. Prose was uncharted territory for me, so I wrote in the same way I heard my family stories growing up, piecemeal, vignettes, moment by moment, until the disparate pieces began to weave themselves together. After class one evening, one of my professors, Reginald Gibbons, looked at some of my early pages of my book and made a suggestion that would wholly transform the way I understood my family's story. My history and myself, that would totally transform the way I understood my family story, my history, and myself. He told me the university gave students free access to Ancestry.com. I'm going to pause right there to tell you that the library gives you access to Ancestry.com too. So if you didn't know that, you better use your library card and find out. We have a ton of databases. Anywho, I soon found myself in front of a computer at the school library, hoping to learn more about my grandfather's mysterious death. The research skills I developed in law school suddenly seemed to have real purpose. What began as a search on Ancestry.com later sent me on a path through archived newspapers, military records, and history books. I learned that as a young officer in Memphis, my grandfather had caught a serial rapist who'd been terrorizing women in the city. I learned that the black newspapers in Memphis had reported my grandfather's death to be a lynching, while the city's white newspapers attributed it to a boating accident. Pardon me. I also discovered that before becoming a homicide detective, my grandfather had been a sergeant in Company A of the 183rd Combat Engineer Battalion. On April 11th, 1945, his all-Negro unit was a part of the group of American soldiers that liberated the children's camp at Buchenwald. The tension between these facts stopped me in my tracks. A man who had descended from enslaved people, growing up to free enslaved people, and then coming home and being brutally murdered by fellow citizens of the country he served. In times of extreme sorrow, we pray. In times of extreme joy, we pray. Memphis is my prayer. I knew that my family's folklore would be the material I worked with to create lasting American art. If the pain of our past, the strength of our struggles, the fondness of my ancestral home was the fabric of my quilt, and my words were its thread, I wanted to pay tribute to my ancestors, but also to my parents and siblings, to my city, And so I wrote about love, about beautiful black boys and how the horrors of war and racism changed their lives forever. About how a kitchen or a beauty shop full of beautiful black women can shake the rafters of heaven and can entertain angels without realizing it. About a city, black, poor, but also magical and musical and ancient. I wanted to show the blackness not as a burden, but as a crown only a few get to wear. A dowry that is priceless. Memphis is an ode to my city and to the black women living here. She is my proof that a great people resides in the South, that its women are full of mystery and magic and humor and grit. They can gut catfish and fry green tomatoes and lead revolutions and do hair and tuck their children in at night and sing all the while. Memphis is my declaration that our lives, our beautiful, rich, full black lives, matter so very much. Woo! Anyway, I should have read that first. That's okay though. Um, this book was just phenomenal. I don't remember if I mentioned this. I think I did, but the audiobook is narrated by Karen Murray, and you can get it on the Libby app. Let's go to the next question. Actually, let me go and check the I'm going to check the comments. And while I do that, talk amongst yourself. Let me see if there's any comments or anything that anybody has left me. No questions so far. Okay, hold on. I need to go in here and highlight this really quickly. And put it in the comment section. So, there, sign up for the newsletter there. Because, like I said earlier, I sent out a newsletter, I think it was on Monday, had to have been on Monday, with a couple of interviews, about 5 to 6 minutes, 2 of them interviews with Tara M. Stringfellow, and just some background things, the read-alikes. If you really like this book, stick around to the end. We're almost done, y'all, because I have some really awesome read-alikes too. But if you sign up for the newsletter, you get all of this ahead of time as well. So for those of you who like to prep and prepare or want to get caught up and know what's happening and whatnot ahead of time, sign up for the newsletter and let me go on and hold on. It said it didn't. I'm getting a message. It said it didn't post it. That's okay. Sign up for the newsletter. Let me get the banner going. There it is. All right. Let me see if I can post this again because it said it didn't. Okay, there it is. Okay, there it is. So now also you should be able to see that link on the YouTube and on the Facebook. Okay, great. Let's move on to the next question. Let me look at my script real quick. Okay, so we have about 20 minutes left, so I'm going to try to wrap it up. Let's see. Let's do the question number 4. So it says, wars fascinate me, Joan says. How on earth could a sane man charge into a volley of bullets, say at D-Day? Weren't they terrified? She later compares the feelings to her own experience walking into August's house knowing Derek lived there too. What do you make of this comparison? Do you believe personal traumas can be as damaging as war? Absolutely. You hear me? You hear me? People can be traumatized. War is not the only way that you can be traumatized. And Joan did experience a very violent trauma at an incredibly young age. And oftentimes when people are describing PTSD, especially if they've been through any abuse, be it sexual, physical, emotional, mental, however, a lot of their descriptors are the same because it's the same kind of trauma. Well, it's not the same kind of trauma because it's trauma, and those experiences tend to overlap one another. So yes, I have seen people who have had trauma from being abused or just being in war or anything like that, and their descriptions are pretty much the same. So I do believe that personal traumas can be as damaging as war. Unfortunately, that's kind of how things are sometimes. All right. How do Myron's and Hazel's lives and death reverberate throughout the future generations in their family? So, like Joan, I have family members who I only know of through stories. I've never met them, and the way that I know them is through what other people have told me. And I think that it's important, especially for Myron and Hazel, how their legacy was so strong that people in the neighborhood would tell their grandchildren about them, that people in the surrounding communities knew who they were. After Myron's murder, Hazel did not stop. During the civil rights movement, Her house was a hub for people to get organized. She would have fish fries to raise money for the children who were trying to desegregate these different schools, to help with the Montgomery bus boycott, to help people who were a part of the Freedom Riders and things like that. That folks like Hazel liberated themselves. They were smart, they were industrious, and they did what they needed to do to get themselves free. And in Myron as well, his legacy of being the first Black detective in Memphis is huge, 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 huge. When you have stories like that in your family, it teaches you what you're made of, which way to go. Like, for instance, y'all know what time it is. Lovely finna talk about her grannies. That's right. My great-grandmother, Rosetta, she was born in 1913. Very, very fair skin. I wish I had a slide. I'd pull her up. You know what? You know what, y'all? Let me see. Let me see if I can find it on here. Hold on a second. Because I have a picture in here, but I don't know if hold on. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see. You know what? I don't think I can. Hold on. It's probably way down here too. I should just pull them up and make slides out of them, because y'all know I'm finna talk about my grannies. I'm gonna come back over here because I can't find it. Sorry, y'all. Anywho, my great grandmother Rosetta, she is fair skinned, and she and my Aunt Rice used to pass as white all the time to, get better jobs, to help out the community, to help out our family, just to make things easier. Because again, my great grandmother's born in 1913, and so she was also a midwife, because you couldn't just go to the hospital and have your baby as a Black person, even back then, even though slavery was over. But your baby still could get killed by a negligent doctor or a nurse, especially if they were racist. And they were more blatant about it back then. And it still happens to this day. Look up the mortality rate for Black mothers. You go ahead and look that up and see Wacom. And I did say Wacom. Wacom, the mortality rate resembles that of a country with way less resources than America. I wonder what that could be. I wonder, when you're comparing the mortality rate of Black mothers giving birth in hospitals in America, why is it so high? Why are those babies dying? Why are those women dying? I wonder what could be so different about these Black women. And it does not matter their socioeconomics. You could be somebody with a degree, or you could be somebody who's dirt poor. You could be Serena Williams, and you could still almost die giving birth in the hospital as a Black woman. If you're interested in the stats, let me know and I can pull them up for you, but it's true. So anyway, I was talking about my granny. Sorry, y'all, I went off topic. My great-grandmother Rosetta was light-skinned, and so she would pass a lot of the times. And when it was during World War II, I want to say it was World War II, there were some German Jewish folks trying to get away from Hitler. A lot of those folks, I shouldn't say a lot of Jewish people saw what was up, and some of them those who could afford to get out before they started putting people in internment camps, that's what they did. When they got over here, they're refugees. They don't have a whole bunch of money or whatever. So my grandmother and her sister, Rice, we called her Aunt Rice, they had some land that they had pretended to be white and bought some land. And then they told the government, hey, we'll sponsor that Jewish family and they can work our farm. And so my grandmother and my Aunt Rice did sponsor a Jewish family. They did not put them on the land to work the farm. They moved them into the projects, and they were our neighbors. And I grew up with them, learning how to make latkes. We called them potato pancakes, because I guess I couldn't say latke. And celebrating Passover and Purim and stuff. I didn't know I was celebrating Passover and Purim. I just went over their house to eat, because they were our family, basically, like that. Kind of like Stanley. Mr. Stanley, the Jewish man in town who was being respectful as he could of Black people. So, anywho, why did I tell y'all that? Child, I went and the story. So how does that reverberate through future generations? So because I heard that story over and over and over again, and thousands more like that from my mother's side of the family and my dad's side of the family, it let me know that I come from people who do what's right. Who do what's right, even if it might cost them. I come from people who stand on the right side of history, who stand on the right side of justice. And so my moral compass is pretty dang strong and resolute because I actually knew, like I said, 9 grandparents, y'all. I knew 9 grandparents. I lived with 9 grandparents. I heard their story from Jim Crow, civil rights, all of that stuff. And so when you can connect those dots, and you know these people, and or even if you just have the stories, it really does reverberate. It really does help you understand who you come from and what you're supposed to be doing in this world, but everybody else around you too. Because my grandmother Rosetta set up in Denver, and so in a specific neighborhood there, they still know who she is. They know all my relatives. I can't go there and act a fool because they know my people, and they'll be like, "You're Rosetta's grandbaby. You're Terry's grandbaby. You ain't supposed to be acting like that," and they will tell you, very much like the people in this story, like Miss Dawn. Ooh, let's get to Miss Dawn because it's 4:50 and I've been chatting along and chatting. Let's get to Miss Dawn. Hold on a second. Let's just do this. It says, how do the people of Douglas support each other throughout the years? What do you think Memphis is saying about the value of community? Does this community support ever fall short? If so, where? Okay, so again, the neighborhood of Douglas, they are always trying to work together to help out where they can. When Myron was murdered, they all came and they sat watch with Hazel. When they found out that Joan was really talented with her paintbrush, people would let her come and they would sit for her so she could practice drawing. This is when she was an itty bitty baby before she got into that fancy school in London. But then when they saw her talent was developing and she was really, really good, they started to nurture it. They got her into a Saturday art class that was only supposed to be for college students. But her art teacher in high school was like, we can't teach her anymore. She needs to go to this college. And they got her in. It was one word from Mr. So-and-so at her all-black high school. And then Joan was taking classes on Saturday. It was one word from Mr. Stanley because he would ask Miriam or he would ask Hazel about Miriam and them's grades because Mr. Stanley was dead by the time Joan and them went to go live in Memphis. But he would ask Hazel about Miriam and August's grades, and she would be like, "Yeah, well, she's got all A's except for the B in math." And then Mr. Stanley would be like, "Well, you tell her that won't do. I will talk to her." And then Miss Hazel was like, "You're stricter on her than I am." This the man at the grocery store, y'all. The man at the grocery store who owns it and runs it is telling her, "I'm going to talk to your daughter about her grades so that she can do better." He also bought the Miriam a bike and taught her how to ride it. He walked Hazel down the aisle when she was marrying he didn't walk Hazel down the aisle. He walked Miriam down the aisle when she was marrying Jax. You hear me? That's how the community comes together. Miss Dawn came together and told Joan what to do to get rid of Derek. Let's just jump into that too in a second, because it was talking about what is she saying about the value of community. There is pardon me. There is something to be said about the collective genius of the community, that the only way that we are going to advance is through our collective. There is genius in the whole community, and that we are going to cooperate. We do not have to compete to succeed. We can actually help each other and get farther. That's what she was trying to say. At least that's what I think she was trying to say. Let me take a break real quick. Well, not take a break, but I just want to look and make sure that I don't have any comments that I'm missing. Let me check the Facebooks real quick. No, okay. No comments that I'm missing. Good. Actually, let me get off of this so that I don't lose my battery. Okay. So anyway, does this community support ever fall short? If so, where? Yes. Yes, it does. And young men like Derek and even Jax, her father. He didn't grow up in Memphis, but Derek did. And Derek was headed down the wrong path. Derek, unfortunately, was also physically and sexually abused by his father, who we never learned who his daddy was. But also, August is raising him alone in that house. She's a single parent. There was other men in the community, and they didn't have any kind of like community resources to help keep these young men on the right path, to help steer them away from the gangs, to give them a quote unquote father figure. And so I think that's one of the areas where they failed young folks like Derek, unfortunately. Who knows if that father figure would have kept him from, killing people and going to jail? It might have. It might have, if he had a third place to go to, besides home and school, but another place, maybe a community center, maybe church or something like that. Maybe a neighborhood hangout or something like that. It could have steered him in the right way, but he got caught up in them gangs, looking for leadership like most people who get caught up in gangs. So we're going to make this the last question because my throat's getting a little scratchy. But let's go on and see. Where are we? I wasn't sure if my burying that comb was what landed my cousin in prison, Joan says, but I thanked God and Miss Dawn for the magic of it. Do you believe the magic worked? Either way, do you feel Joan got justice for what happened to her when Derek went to prison? Why or why not? So, for some of you old schools or you old heads who have been in the book club for a long time, you'll know that I talk a lot about African American folk magic. Hoodoo is what it's called. Some people do it's called hoodoo or conjure, root working, conjure working, those type of things. It's an amalgamation of religious practices from West Africa, where we were kidnapped from, combined with what we learned here when we got to the shores of America. And depending on where you are, taking some things from specific Native American tribes, and sometimes with Christianity, definitely with hoodoo, because they be quoting that book of Psalms all the time. Anyway, the question was, did I believe the magic worked, and do I believe in that kind of magic? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. It's 2023, and I promise you people are still practicing hoodoo. There's actually conferences all over America and in other parts of the world. But it is a belief system, and like most belief system, if it is working for you, you're going to pass that down onto other people. You're going to see that these practices and beliefs that have helped you get through hard times and helped you celebrate good times can be used by future generations. So to answer that question quickly, yeah, I'm sure that magic worked. I'm not sure if Joan got justice. In the end, Joan says that her trauma could not be healed by causing her cousin trauma, but she had to go to the jail to visit him and see that he was dealing with monsters and living with terrors that she was now free from. So it's a complicated situation between her and her cousin. Knowing that he was abused terribly, severely, doesn't make what he did right to his cousin. It does help you understand why something like that might happen. And again, this was when it occurred with her, it was in the 80s, I want to say. So even back in the 80s, we were not aware of how men could be sexually assaulted, or little boys, or that they would need counseling. And Joan's mother did ask, but the doctor that they went to go see was white, and he just dismissed them. And she didn't want her child to get taken away from her by pressing the issue, which very well could have happened. So anyway, what, I need to wrap this up because I really did enjoy this book so much. If you couldn't tell, I absolutely really love this book quite a bit. If you did not get a chance to read it, I highly recommend that you read it. This is her first novel, and it will not be her last. I promise y'all, we're going to be hearing about Tara M. Stringfellow for such a long time. Just such a way with words. She really respects the written word. It's such a good storyteller. You know what? That's another thing, and then we really will wrap it up. Is that in our book club's history, y'all have noticed, or maybe you haven't noticed, that there have been a couple of people in the military who have been featured on our book club list. And I don't know if it's just new to me, like everybody else knew that the military told stories as a way to impart very important information. But they are crafting a whole bunch of really good storytellers. Just on our list alone, Mickey Kendall, I think we read her last year. She wrote that book, Hood Feminism. She was in the Army, and her storytelling is supreme. Like, she has to take complex, hard, nonfiction topics and condense them down, put them in layman's terms and relate them to us so that we can understand what she's saying. She's phenomenal at that. Another person, Justina Ireland, I really like her. I had to quit putting all her books on our book club, but we've read several books from her. We read Ophi's Ghost, and we read Dread Nation. She was also in the military. I think she was in the Army as well. She could have been in the Marines, but I think she was in the Army. Again, using the military storytelling tradition to impart important information. Phenomenal. I'm just going to start doing a little bit of research to see if this is a bigger tradition, and how many books of people who were service members or military service members, and how well they write. Because it so far so good. 3. And Tara wasn't in the military, but her father was. And that storytelling and love for words was imparted to her from him and the rest of her family as well. So I really hope that y'all enjoyed this book as much as I did. If you have not had a chance to read it, please fix that. Fix it, and fix it for free, because you got a library card. And if you don't, come and see me, and I will get you a library card. Now, pardon me. Excuse me, y'all. So let's get to wrapping this up. Oh, also, let me get the read-alikes out. We're going to do one more thing, okay? So there's Huckleberry Hound. That's Tara and Huckleberry Hound. Let me hide this. Get that out the way. The next month's book is going to be, should we have a drum roll? That's my drum roll. Next month for April, we're going to be reading Legendborn by Tracy Dion. It's a retelling or a reimagining of the King Arthur tales mixed in with Black folklore and magic woven in. We're going to be doing the live stream here on April the 20th at 4 p.m. So please sign up for the newsletter, because I will be sending that out soon with the background story of Legendborn, and all the extra stuff, the interviews and some of the questions that we'll be talking about during the live stream. So I hope that you can join me for that. Also, before we completely finish up, if you did have a chance to read the book and you really enjoyed it, some read-alikes that we do have at the library are Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson, Take My Hand by Dolene Perkins Valdez, These Impossible Things by Salma El Wardene, and Night Crawling by Layla Motley. Those are 4 books that have similar themes that we discussed in Memphis. And I can't wait for Tara to write another book. Whoops. And for those of you who did get a chance to read the book, I want to show y'all something. Look. It's a kimono, just like August. You can't really see it that well because green screen. But anywho, please join me in April for Tracy Dion's Legend Born. I hope that you enjoyed the live stream. If you did, please share it. Please like it. Let the algorithm know that you like what I'm doing. Let your friend know that you like what I'm doing. Let your mama know you like what I'm doing. Tell her to come and join the online book club. It's the only online book club that we have at PCCLD. Before I go to, y'all need to come in and get this really cool to-go kit that we have at the library. At least at Lamb, I don't know how many other branches have it. It is a visible mending kit to celebrate Women's History Month. You're going to get this cool bookmark that has a QR code right there to take you to all these different books to teach you how to use all the stuff in your kit. The kit includes a needle, and then it also includes different cloth. So, like, we have about 4 or 5 small pieces of cloth and thread inside of the kit. I don't want to tear it apart. You can mend socks, gloves. You can make patches on your knees if you got holes in your pants. You can make patches on a sweater or something like that. So come on in while supplies last. We're running low, so come in and get them before they're all gone. All right, thank you so much for rocking with me. I'll rock with y'all because y'all rock with me. I will see you guys back here next month on April the 20th at 4 p.m. so we can chat more about books. In the meantime, come and visit any PCCLD branch. We'd be happy to help you. As always, see you guys next time. Bye. You can't see me smiling, but I'm smiling.